Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Binge Chickens. I'm your host, Alex, and I have Lo with me. How are you, Lo?
Hello. Oh, hello.
Hey, Lo.
Hello there. Sorry,
So
I'm reading. Yes, I'm reading up on what we're talking about.
that's okay. That's okay. So yes, we are back for another episode of our Doctor Who reviews, looking back on the series from Christopher Eccleston all the way through to Jodie Whittaker. And our last episode, we had series 3, which was David Tennant and Freema Agyeman. And this season, we have David Tennant and Donna Noble, Catherine Tate as Donna Noble.
Yeah.
In David Tennant's last season. So we will be covering the specials as well. We sort of figured they fit in with this season and takes us all the way through to his regeneration. Spoilers. There will be spoilers in this episode. But yeah, I guess I'll start with, what are your overall thoughts on this season, Lo?
It's actually really good. I feel like most of the episodes are quite engaging and interesting. There's a lot that happens in this series, and some of those episodes that are really well known, and classics, I guess, of New Who. So yeah, it's a great season.
What do you make of Catherine Tate as the new companion this season?
I love Donna Noble. She's great. There's such good banter between her and the Doctor, and I think because they don't have that relationship element, which is what we've had with Rose and Martha, that it's a lot more comfortable, their relationship.
Even though, like, it is sort of an ongoing joke, maybe over the first half of the season, that people keep thinking that they're married, which I found really funny because of the fact that there is no romantic tension between them. That any sort of suggestions that they're married, and they're just like, oh, no, we're not married. Was quite funny.
Yeah.
Yes. I think this is definitely my favorite David Tennant season. I think there are very few weak episodes in this season, or even the specials as well. We sort of talked on the last episode about David Tennant as the Doctor and maybe being a little bit overrated. But I think when you think of him as the Doctor, I think this season is the most definitive of him as the Doctor.
Yes, the showcase is the 10th Doctor at his best for
Definitely.
most of the season until the specials.
Until the specials, probably, yeah.
Until the specials.
Well, look, how about we start off with, we'll talk about the Christmas special that we got, which was Voyage of the Damned. So it was just after Martha had left the TARDIS. We get the sort of typical what as the Titanic crashes into the TARDIS. And then we get a pretty rollicking adventure with Kylie Minogue, and we get Donna's grandfather.
They did dirty with that wig. That annoyed me, that whole episode. They could have, it's Kylie Minogue, get her a better coloured wig. Thank you.
And her accent was a bit interesting. I mean, I don't know if she did the best British accent. I kept hearing a bit of Aussie twang coming in there as well. But yeah, what did you think of the episode?
It's a great one as well in terms of Christmas specials. We remember Christmas specials probably reach out to a larger audience than the regular episodes because it is on Christmas Day. Well, they were originally aired on Christmas Day. So yeah, I think it was a really good one-off episode with a nice contained story. Some of it was a bit gimmicky, like the Doctor being flown to the engine by the angels.
Yeah.
But again, we've got the strong female character was that close to being the companion. He was more than ready to welcome another blonde on board.
I was about to say, I think yeah.
And I probably would have watched the Kylie Minogue season. I would have been okay with that. But no, I think it's a good episode. You have some interesting, an interesting mix of characters. The Titanic, you've got the funny element of the Queen staying at Buckingham Palace to prove that London's a safe place to be at Christmas.
I do like that they take the piss out of that every Christmas something happens, everyone leaves London.
Yeah. So yeah, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. You know, these Christmas episodes are always just meant to be a bit of fun. They're not going to be
Yeah.
too intense. I think Wilfred being Donna's grandfather was sort of retrospectively fit in. So at the time in this episode, I think he's just meant to be a guy selling newspapers. But I do like, looking back on it now that yes, you know, it's him being in this episode. Yeah, the angels sort of like flying the Doctor up was pretty cringe. But it reminded me of, I think it's the Fourth Doctor, the Robots of Death, or one of those episodes where the robots sort of turn evil. Like there was that kind of vibe from the beginning. But I mean, there's the guy that's meant to be like, I mean, I can't remember the character's name in the Titanic. The guy played by, is it Billy Zane?
Yes, it is William. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy in this who's obviously like a riff on that guy. I thought, and my memory was actually wrong. I thought he was going to be the one that died, because usually the stereotype is that the dickhead is the guy that survives, and then it did sort of happen again in this one. I was kind of like, wasn't great.
I think the stereotype, the expectation is that the dickhead will undergo a change and like sacrifice himself because he's seen that, you know, there are other people out there, and this guy was like, nope, making money.
I made all this money. Yeah, it's great. Hey, Doctor, I made all this money. Yeah. But then at least we do get the I forget what his name is, the guy that ran the tours, who ended up having a lot of money and was able to buy a house and retire to Earth, which was quite nice.
The guy from Keeping Up Appearances, which
is it Max or something? I don't know. And we got
yes, and I remember when we were watching, I was telling you that his actor was in a classic Who episode.
No, not Max. Max was the guy that owned the company. But anyway, sorry.
Not Max Capricorn. No, I'm gonna give me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna check my notes. Let's see if I can work out. Alfonso was the midshipman.
Yeah, so we got to see Alonso, which was good.
And he's Russ. What is his name as well? Oh my God, I am blanking on everything. Russell Tovey, great actor. If you've watched Being Human, the UK version, not the American version, UK version, recommend watching it. Fantastic. No, who are they looking for? Not Wilfred. He's not listed here on the cast.
Yeah, I can't see what his name was, but anyway, yes, like it was good that he.
Slade is the Rixton Slade was the rich guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, looking into it too much.
That's all right. No, that's okay. Yeah, look, overall a good Christmas special. And so just before we go on to favorite, least favorite episodes, I thought because we do have
Clive Swift or Jeffrey Palmer. Yes, Clive Swift, because he was also in the classic episode Revelation of the Daleks.
Yes.
Yep. Which I liked that link. We've noticed this a couple of times where some old actors or actresses from classic Who have appeared in New Who, and we see that in Midnight as well, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Yes, but I thought just before we do go on to those episodes, we can talk about the other Christmas special that we got. I think there's technically 3 Christmas specials, but we'll talk about the other main one, which was The Next Doctor as well.
Yes.
So jumping ahead a little bit here, but I guess because we're sort of combining the specials in here as well. Your comment about him having a type just prompted me to think about this episode, because whilst we have what's his name? I'm forgetting his name now. David Morrissey, thinking he's the Doctor, not actually being the Doctor, but he does have Rosita as his companion, which I really liked. That he's, and then David Tennant sort of saying, "Oh, nice name." That he's sort of still adopted a few of the elements from David Tennant, was quite funny.
Yes, yeah. So this 2008 Christmas special was an interesting one as well. Different because I feel because it was set in the past, different in that way. Still,
because they've all been contemporary so far.
Yeah, still Christmas Day and still London being attacked on Christmas Day. Just in a more Victorian Charles Dickens era London.
Yeah, and I guess really interesting because at the time, obviously, context being that David Tennant was, rumors that he was leaving Doctor Who, that they were going to cast the next Doctor, and so we get this Christmas special called The Next Doctor, and David Tennant spends the first 20, 30 minutes of the episode thinking this guy is his future self. And then he's, before the credits roll, we've got him saying, I've got my sonic screwdriver, just a screwdriver. He's got this TARDIS, which is a hot air balloon. He's got Rosita. He's got his companion. And so David Tennant at first thinks this is the next Doctor. And so everyone sort of comes along for that ride, which I thought was a really fun quirk. And I've sort of said before to you that I would like at some point us to act, and maybe we're getting that with Joe Martin being a Doctor in Jodie Whittaker's season, where we could actually have the next Doctor appear in a previous Doctor's episode, would be quite cool.
Well, we keep having companions appear in previous episodes and then popping up. And then you saw Capaldi, I guess, sort of appearing, I mean, not as the Doctor, but in Fires of Pompeii before becoming the Doctor. So I guess we're kind of sort of doing that, but not really.
Yeah, and we get all the little clips of all the previous Doctors in this episode. And I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time that Paul McCann's Doctor is actually on screen, so that everyone can go, yes, this does actually count. It was that American sort of movie, but it does actually count, which was quite nice. Sort of brings him into the family like that. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those episodes where I feel like the actual plot of Cybermen attacking London I never think of this episode with like it being a Cyberman episode. I always think of it as, it's like a fun, quirky next Doctor, like Doctor sort of stuff going on.
Yes. Yeah. And I think as a standalone episode, again, you look at the viewers, it was it's Christmas, so it's viewed by people who are not really familiar with Doctor Who, potentially. So yeah, it's, again, I like Christmas specials because they are that one-off contained adventure and they are meant to be a bit of fun. I feel like as we get into the Matt Smith 11th Doctor Christmas specials, they start to get a bit confusing and weird.
Yeah.
Like this is very clear. As I said, it's very much directed to the masses. It's light, it's fun. You've got a tangible villain. It's not overly complicated. And yeah, it's just an enjoyable watch.
I feel like Moffat's sort of channeling himself into David Tennant when in Blink, David Tennant saying everything's sort of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, and that it got away from him a little bit, because I suspect with some of Moffat's timey wimey plots, they start to get away from him a little bit as we find.
A little bit.
Yeah, look, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. As I say, yeah, I like the Christmas specials overall. The ones that we've seen so far, plus the Voyage, like the ones we're discussing, the Voyage of the Damned and the Next Doctor, they're all good episodes. I liked Astrid as a character. As I said, I would have happily watched her as a companion. And I do like that Alonso makes an appearance later on.
Yes. Well, let's talk now about, I mean, there's a lot of episodes that we've got here, so we will try to touch on every episode to some extent, but maybe because we've got so many episodes, let's talk about your two favorite episodes.
Oh, you limited me to two now. I can't say all of them my favorite. Yeah, I can't pick my sixth favorite.
Well, we'll count, if it's a two-parter, that counts as one. So you could do technically 3 episodes if you wanted to squeeze them in. Okay. But there are a lot of good episodes to talk about.
Yeah,
I don't know how I'm going to talk about my least favorite. It's a bit of a struggle, but anyway, sorry. Continue.
I don't even know. Like this episode, like you've already said, this season is so. It's a good season. Like it's probably the best 10th Doctor season.
Probably, definitely.
So it's very hard. I mean, we've got series 2, 3, 4 with the 10th Doctor. I think the 4th season is definitely the best. Honorable mention, Fires of Pompeii.
Yeah, that's got a lot going for it. And I watching it, I'm sure when, I'm sort of picturing before the season started, you get the names of all the episodes, you get like the 1-sentence blurb of the episode, and it's like, Doctor travels back in time to Pompeii on the day of Vesuvius erupting, and you go, oh, yeah, we'll be an all right episode. But then it's got, we've got Capaldi, who later becomes the Doctor. We've got Karen Gillan later becoming Amy. We've got, you know, all sorts of fun references to things. We've got, like, you know, the running joke with whenever they speak Latin that they think they're talking Celtic is quite funny as well. It's just a solid episode. It's a great episode.
It's a good episode. Probably, yeah. Okay, so that's probably my number one honorable mention.
Wow, you okay?
Partners in Crime as well, just because of that opening, where we see those sliding door moments between the Doctor and Donna, and they just miss each other. It's a very entertaining open for a new companion, and as I said, this is where we get Donna back, and it's so nice to have her back because her and the Doctor have such a good banter and relationship.
That moment, that scene with the Doctor and Donna seeing each other through the glass, and it's up there with my favorite scenes in Doctor Who, just because of the character acting from Catherine Tate, and then they're talking back and forward, and then they glance over and realize that they're being watched by the villain. It was quite funny.
Good. It's very funny, and it's a very contained episode. I like contained episodes. You know, it's got that clear beginning complication, and you have the Miss Foster, and she gets done over by the adipose, which is great as well. And then Donna finally, you know, agrees to.
It is a very typical Russell T Davies modern day Earth setting. As I was sort of saying in our last episode, we've got the spaceship over Earth with the aliens and everything. I'm like, there are sort of tropes that Russell T Davies likes to follow, but yes, good episode.
Yes. Okay. And I have another honorable mention, but I have a feeling that will be your favorite. So I won't actually.
Okay.
No, you won't. No. I know which one's your favorite. Okay, we'll talk about it afterwards. My favorite, probably. I don't know. It's so hard. Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yeah. Okay. Good one.
I don't know if that's surprising. It would probably be between Unicorn and the Wasp and the Library two-parter.
I reckon Unicorn and the Wasp is a very underrated episode. I don't think it gets talked about as much as it should for how funny, how good, fun it sort of is as a self-contained story.
Yeah. I am a huge Agatha Christie fan. I love her books. They're very easy to read and very easy to enjoy. I mean, she has an incredible brain in terms of coming up with these plots, and they're relatively simple but also mysterious, like the Poirot. I mean, we've watched like the movies and things like that, and you know, watching the TV series as well. Growing up, I do like Agatha Christie, so it was nice having those two worlds combined here. Surrounding, you know, Agatha Christie's mystery herself. I'm not, you know, quite sold on the CGI or the actual villain.
Yeah.
The great, like, I do honestly think the reveal of the giant wasp being a person is kind of a letdown. But everything else in this episode is great. Like, you've got the Doctor being poisoned and trying to get rid of the poison. You've got Donna, like, properly going back in time and trying to fit in, again, like from Pompeii, doing the same thing, trying to speak in their language. So, like, Pompeii Latin. In the 1920s, she tries to put on that 20s accent and use very outdated language. And they're like, what is wrong with her? But it also reminds me of some of those, again, classic Who episodes where they're set in the mansion and it's the small dinner party or small group, and it's someone in the group who's done something wrong. I do enjoy, those types of episodes. Again, contained is my word I'm going to use, because once we get to series 5, contained goes out the window.
And I was just going to flick this up because this is obviously they talk at the end of the episode about Agatha Christie and how she was, and obviously she was influenced. You know, obviously she was influenced by the plot because there's the giant wasp on this cover.
Yes.
Which I don't know, it could just be perspective or whatever. But it feels like, I mean, I don't know who wrote the episode, whether it was Russell T Davies who just sort of went, is there something with Agatha Christie that we could incorporate as an alien in this episode? And they've gone, oh, giant wasp, sure, that works.
Yeah. Potentially. That makes sense. I mean, if they could do that, it would make sense rather than to have, I can't imagine it was a coincidence.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think with all these sorts of, whenever they try and have like a famous person, they're like, is there some supernatural thing that they've ever talked about? Or like with like the whole joke about, Agatha Christie and there's a murder, and it would be like seeing Charles Dickens at Christmas with ghosts. And
yes,
sure enough, that happened with the Ninth
and
Doctor.
yeah,
So yeah.
exactly, exactly. It was a good, like, there was lots of good banter in this episode. Now, what is your favorite? And I'm assuming you've got an honorable mention that I have not mentioned yet.
Yes, I was just going to quickly say before on the banter, talking about them being mistaken as a couple or whatever. We get them mistaken as a couple at the start, but then when the Doctor gets poisoned and he needs a shock, and so Donna kisses him, and then he says, "I should do that more often." The detox,
Yeah,
not the kiss. So I thought that was quite good as well.
yeah. There's lots of funny
Yeah,
lines in that one.
yeah. Look, I will probably. Oh, this is really. I've got two honorable mentions, and it's going to be a cheat because one of them's a two-parter. So I'll go
Yeah.
first. Honorable mention is Turn Left, because as a
Yeah.
big sci-fi fan, I love sort of alternate universe or what ifs, and like if this didn't happen, how that would impact things. And we get basically the events of series 3 and 4. Had the Doctor died at the Runaway Bride, and what was going to happen? We've got Sarah Jane sacrificing herself on the hospital that goes to the moon, I think, and then we've got Torchwood blowing up the ship with the Sontaran stratagem plot.
Yeah.
And I think obviously the Titanic crashes, so Donna is sent off to Leeds, which is obviously the worst possible place on Earth that you could go to. Based on that shirt behind me, I'd say Leeds is probably the worst possible place on Earth to be sent.
Well, look, judging by Donna's reaction, I think she agrees with you.
Yeah. And it was, obviously it was almost the first part of the finale. So I'm sort of cheating because we'll probably touch on it when we talk about the finale. But
that's why I didn't mention it.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. I don't quite see it as part of the finale. I think officially it's not. That's why I'm sort of cheating.
Yeah.
But I think there's a few references through the season. We'll talk about the arc later. There's a lot of different arcs in this series, but there's something on her back being a reference to this beetle thing in this episode. And then just the final scene where the Doctor is sort of saying, "Oh, that was fun, and you're fine now." And then Donna's saying, "Oh, the girl that I saw said that the stars are going out," and the Doctor's kind of like, "Oh, this girl kind of sounds relevant." And then she says "bad wolf," and the Doctor just freaks out. It's like that's like a goosebump sort of moment. So that was a good end to that one.
Yeah, it's a great episode, and like it's that Dr. Light episode, and I think out of all the Dr. Light episodes we've got, I mean, Blink again is great, but this one just seeing all those events replayed and what has gone wrong now that the Doctor's not there is it's really well done. And yeah, you really like this episode. You don't need the Doctor at all for this episode, because like, even with Blink, like he is not necessarily. He's in the episode and he's woven through the episode. This is like we've got no Doctor. We've got him at the beginning as they're walking to the market, and he's haggling at the end, and when he says, "Donna, what happened?" But that's it. Every other plot point is
Donna.
Yes, it's around him because it's around the fact that he's gone, but it's all Donna. And we get Billy Piper back, and it's just I love that episode too. Actually, maybe that's my favorite.
So and that's another one that I think it gets
so hard.
Yeah.
This is like series 1 where there was obviously a clear, I don't remember which one I said it was, but there was a clear like no episode I just didn't enjoy, and there's a clear one here I just didn't enjoy either. But at the same time, every other episode was so good. I was like, oh, they've all got good points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my other honorable mention is the Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead two-parter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because obviously we get, River Song is introduced as a character who's become such a momentous character in Doctor Who. And I'm trying to remember how I reacted to this episode when I first saw it, because I think at the time it was, it was a Stephen Moffat episode. You go, oh yeah, cool. Okay. So we've got this character. And obviously she didn't come back until the Matt Smith episodes. So until that happened, it was the case that, okay, it's a cool concept, but it's not necessarily going to be a thing that becomes a more extensive thing. It was only when she was confirmed as coming back with Matt Smith that it was like, oh, okay, we're going to actually get this as a whole thing, which is cool. But this obviously set it off, and it was a really great two-parter. Stephen Moffat. I mean, there's a reason that they chose Stephen Moffat, or Stephen Moffat wanted to become the showrunner. He did do almost every episode that he did in the Russell T Davies era is fantastic.
Yes.
And this one's no exception. Really, really good fun 2-parter, good mystery, good villain.
Well,
Again, it's a villain that didn't use much CGI. It was a shadow.
No.
The whole scary thing about it was that you couldn't see it. It was something that you just had to run from. And then it was the repeating dialogue from the characters who'd been killed, and that was the terrifying part. And yeah, it worked really well.
You know, and they even mentioned like it's that, and this is what I think these episodes do well in terms of not having the outside alien, is that they make it about things that, you know, could be a reality. So
Yeah.
like here, the shadows, and like John is like, oh, we don't have them on Earth. Like shadows are fine. And he's like, oh, you do, just not to this, you know, concentration for the Vashta Nerada. Yeah, I wouldn't really say this is a necessarily fun episode, but it's like very much an edge of your seat episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens that really keeps you wanting to know what happens next. So this works. This is a really effective 2-parter.
Definitely. When we talk about
with the first episode ending with Donna's face being saved, and like I totally forgot that Donna ended up in that alternate world. So when they were like, "Oh, Donna's been saved," I was like, "Oh," and then it clicked. And I was like, "Oh, saved as in she's been saved, not like saved to a portfolio kind of thing. Like her life has been saved."
Yeah.
So they've got like that double meaning. I mean, it's both really that's happened, but yeah, it's a great episode.
Yeah, yeah. And is it, I forget the name of the guy that she marries in this episode, who then she's just like, oh no, they've just conjured up the perfect guy for me. Yeah, because it's not, I don't think it's Dan. They've conjured up the perfect guy for me that, you know, wouldn't exist in reality. And then of course he is real, and he can't say anything because he's got his little stutter, which is.
Yeah, I'm thinking Dave. That's because there's the 2 Daves. And he couldn't pronounce her name because he started on Donna. I don't remember what his name is.
Yeah, but and then of course, so we've got the beginnings of all the tropes with River. We've got spoilers, sweetie, and
you know Lee.
Oh yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
You know, spoilers, sweetie. You know, she's got handcuffs. He's like, why do you have handcuffs? She's got the diary, which he can't read because of spoilers. She's got the sonic screwdriver. And then we've got that great moment at the end of the episode when the doctor's like, I've had all these years to think of how can I save her, and I've given her a screwdriver. That's got to be it. And so he saves her, and she gets to sort of get rebuilt in the system.
Yes. So she at least gets to live out her days in that simulation kind of world.
Yeah.
That was the little girl's world whose name I'm forgetting.
It's not Clara, obviously, but it's something like Cal.
Oh, that would have been so good. Yeah, Cal.
Yeah.
She looks like she'd be young Clara, you know.
Yeah. I think there was a theory for a while. 2-parter. Yeah.
I think that's my favorite 2-part. Like if I had to pick a favorite 2-parter episode that just works, that one just works.
Yeah, definitely.
Very
definitely.
Good. Okay.
Well, actually, the other 2-parter that definitely works is The Empty Child of the Doctor Dances, which is also Stephen Moffat. So he writes a good 2-parter. But yes, anyway.
Yes.
Favorite episode, and might be sort of controversial a little bit on this one because I don't know if many people view it as their favorite, but it's a pretty popular episode, is Midnight, because and I'm sort of repeating myself over and over on this, but it's an invisible enemy, so no dodgy CGI to sort of take you out of it, and it's like a Lord of the Flies-esque sort of you know, you're stuck in a cabin and who will turn against who. It's sort of a cop out because they say it's the creature was sort of feeding on their fears and stuff and making them more agitated than they would have been. But like you sort of get at the start, they're all friendly and chatting and joking, and then it just becomes worse and worse. And you know, you sort of mentioned, is it David Troughton who's in this episode? Who's our old King Peladon from our John Pertwee years? As you said, he's no longer as attractive as he was.
Oh, that's mean.
I believe. Well, I don't think that was your words.
Look, I don't think I know it doesn't need to be repeated on the podcast.
He's older. Gosh. He's older.
Look, let's say that aging.
I apologize to him if he's listening to this. Yeah.
Aging's not kind to anyone, and I can imagine that. I don't know. I think him as King Peladon. I wouldn't have put that was the same person,
Yeah,
but also
yeah.
you got to keep in mind that the version of the Peladon episodes that we
Feeling
watched,
there's
like,
a bit
are
of backtracking going on here.
from the 60s, so the quality of the actual taping is crappy.
Yeah,
It's not HD. We see everything now
yeah,
in HD.
yeah, yeah. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it?
Yes, I do like it. It is a very good episode. I guess I'm not as passionate about it as you are. It is very much that um, Lord of the Flies-esque, and it's very much I guess, reflection on the human psyche, and what we do when we get into a fight or flight situation, and how the group mentality reacts. So yeah, I love it as a like psychological thriller type episode, because you're very close to thinking like you watching it. I mean, and not knowing the ending, I forgot what the ending was. You're waiting for them to throw the Doctor out.
Yeah,
But then it's also terrifying that the alien who, masks itself as part of being a human, or masks itself that, like, becomes one of the people, is able to predict what is going to be said,
yeah, yeah. And
and
it's
speak at
obviously
the
because
same time.
yeah, well, and of course because Donna's not there, so the Doctor is being overpowered by this alien and then overpowered by the people, and you're just watching it, just like, well, how's he going to get out of this? Because he's got no companion, he's got nothing to sort of help him. And then, of course,
Yeah,
it's the hostess who notices that the alien is saying, molto bene and allons-y, and she's taken
yeah,
his voice. And then the hostess realizes and sacrifices herself, and no one
yes,
knows
and
her
I think it
name.
was beautiful. I know it's so sad, but like I think it's a good reflect. I think that's one of these episodes that are effective at making audiences think about their own actions.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Well, that's all our favorite episodes, and there was certainly a lot of them. And so probably
The
the
whole
harder
series is
question to
good.
ask, what was your, and so maybe not necessarily a bad episode, but what was the episode that you enjoyed the least?
Um,
And we can
Look,
include the
as I said,
specials if there's any
they're all
specials.
good. And I will consider the specials separately because they're an entity of their own. I feel like they deserve their own because this
Sure.
series, like series 4, with Donna as the companion, excluding the specials, is a fantastic season. If you add in the specials, you're degrading that season. I would say that my least favorite episode is
I think we're
two-parter.
probably going to say the same one, but
Yeah, the
yeah,
Sontaran stratagem.
yeah, yeah.
And Poison Sky. The Planet of the Uter episode I actually really like as well. I wouldn't put it as one of my favorites. Like it's a
That's
good Doctor Who episode,
and that's another funny
and
one
I
when you
love
get
the
people
Ood.
and you get people complaining these days about, the woke PC stuff in Doctor Who. Planet of the Ood is a very anti-slavery, all sorts of like poor practices on Earth, and talking about how, was it this one or was it Fires of Pompeii where the Doctor says he's commenting on slavery and Donna's like, well, I don't have slaves, and he's like, well, who do you think made your shirt? I think
Yeah,
I think it was Planet of the Ood.
yeah,
So there's all those sorts of messages in this episode, and so like that's pretty, like, it's kind of a pretty hard hitting message. So no,
yeah.
that's a good one.
We haven't talked about it, but like I like that episode as well. Like it's a great episode. And as you said, like this, or as we've both already said, this season's so epic. It's hard to find one that's not. And I think the one that doesn't, one story that doesn't hold up as well as every other story in this season is the Sontaran stratagem and the Poison Sky two-parter.
Dare I say, it's another Russell T Davies alien spaceship in the sky looming over threatening Earth. Like
He didn't write
just
it.
saying.
It was
Oh,
written by
okay.
Helen
No,
Rayner.
fair cop. Helen Rayner. Okay, fair cop. It's
Leave
a Russell
Russell
T
T
Davies
Davies
trope.
alone.
I know, but it's a fair cop. It's not Russell T Davies, but it is a trope that pops up in a lot of his episodes. So I will say that. But yes, fair enough. It wasn't him who wrote this one, and it's another one with pollution and stuff like that as the theme. So it's kind of a bit PC or whatever you'd call it. I'm just saying, like, that's what people kind of complain as being all of a sudden in Doctor Who. And I'm like, it's been there for a while, guys. Come on.
I mean, I do like that we get Martha back in this episode. I do like that we get to know Donna's family a bit more.
We get Unit.
We get the Unit means nothing to me without the Brigadier.
We get a reference to the Brigadier.
Yes, we don't get the Brigadier though. It's just the Sontaran and the whiny little brat
I
who
think that's
Radigan, whatever his name is, just takes it down.
Though he does redeem himself at the end, but I agree that like the I don't know, it's just it's one of those like modern day Earth episodes where it's sort of like it's fine, but it's nothing amazing, and it's like a very paint by numbers sort of plot. So it's very we get Martha back's probably the big highlight of it. Who then travels. We haven't talked about the Doctor's daughter, which is the next
I was about to say,
episode.
there's one episode we have not touched on at all.
Yeah,
is that one.
And I feel really bad because I'm not going to say that's my least favorite episode of the season because it's a great episode. But if I'm picking a weak episode other than what you've talked about there with the Sontaran stratagem and Poison Sky, the Doctor's daughter has a really cool concept with the daughter being the genetic coding from the Doctor and then the wars just being fought for a week is a really cool
Oh my God,
twist
I
ending.
love that reveal and I don't remember when I originally watched it.
I knew there was something like that. Yeah.
I was just like, that's so interesting because it's again another comment on the no, it's not the female, it's the human psyche. And I think Jenny would have been fun to have as a companion for a couple of episodes as well.
We get Gendry.
Oh my God, Gendry. Before Gendry.
I think that was a fine episode, and I really do like the design of the alien creature in that as well. But
yes,
like reflecting on this season, you think the highlights of this season, you don't necessarily think of that episode. So that's why I'm it's a cop out, but I'm probably saying that's my episode that I enjoyed the least rather than least favorite because I enjoyed all of them.
Did you enjoy the Sontaran stratagem?
No, that's always been my go-to weakest episode and two-parter because you get the clone Martha and stuff as well. Where I'm like, it's very kind of cliche stuff, and I'm like,
I like the aliens and the Doctor's daughter, and the one like the fact that Martha's able to bond with them, and then one sacrifices for her, and like I think it's a good episode, but there are and this is what I said with the Planet of the Youth episode. These episodes are all so good that yes, there are some that aren't as good, but are still good. And if they were in another Doctor Who season, they'd probably be some of the better episodes. Because it's just so solid across the board. Like the only one that's really not great is the Sontaran two-parter.
If that Sontaran two-parter was in Martha's season instead of the Dalek two-parter, that elevates that season instantly in my mind. Like that two-parter instead of the Daleks, I'm like, that's so much better. Like those are good episodes. Yeah. So it's not to say that they're poor episodes. Yeah, definitely.
Just out of this whole season, they're probably the weakest one. That one, like that episode two-parter is probably the weakest. Yeah. Okay. So do you want to talk about this finale the arc leading into our finale?
I was just going to say, so we'll talk about the finale, but to talk about the finale, let's talk about the arcs leading into it because there are several. So in the previous seasons, we've had Bad Wolf, we've had Saxon, we've had Torchwood as just sort of themes in the background. But in this season, we've got the disappearing planets, which we get in a couple of the episodes, Pyrovilia, the planet of the adipose and things like that. We've got the disappearing bees. We've got the Dr. Donna, which is a bit more of a subtle arc, which I really liked. We've got the thing on Donna's back, which I think is in one or two of the earlier episodes it gets mentioned. I can't remember which ones. So there's a few different things leading up to this finale. So did you think that the arcs or the themes through the season worked really well in building to that finale?
I like the idea of the missing planets. I thought that was cool. And the bees as well. I don't know how I feel about the Dr. Donna thing because I'm not sure how I feel about the Dr. Donna thing in the
It's very Bad Wolf-ish in the sense that it's, because when the meta crisis happens and we get the Dr. Donna, it's like, it's echoed back through our time together sort of thing, bringing us together. I'm like, that's basically the same thing as Bad Wolf was. Bad Wolf was the words linking them through time.
Yes.
So it was a little bit similar, but I thought it was fine, and it wasn't too in your face through the season. It was more of a people joking about them being together and the Ood calling them the Dr. Donna and stuff. And But yeah, so what did you think of the finale? I mean, I sort of said as we watched it, it felt like the Avengers before the Avengers, where you've got, you know, Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, and Doctor Who kind of coming together, and you've got all these different teams working together. You've got Mickey and Rose and Rose's mum back, and you've got Sarah Jane Smith. You've got all of Torchwood in it, which is really cool.
Yes.
Which is really
All
fun after
remaining
having watched
Torchwood.
Torchwood.
The remaining Torchwood.
R.I.P. Tosh and Owen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked really well. Like, it's one of those finales that I look back on and I'm like, oh yeah, it's all right. But when you watch it, I'm like, oh, actually, it does work really well.
Yes. I would argue that this is a 3-part finale because I turn left feeds directly into the Stolen Earth.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I forgot the other arc thing that we haven't really talked about is Rose through the season. So we get Rose and Partners in Crime and on the screen in Midnight and stuff.
Yes. So she keeps popping up, which is cool. It's nice that they've got Rose back. I do enjoy that it's got everyone back. Did it feel a bit too cutesy wootsy at points? Yes. Do I think that when he got shot by a Dalek, the Doctor maybe should have regenerated at the end here rather than having his 4-episode special? It was totally unnecessary. Yes.
Do you okay? So then I'll ask you this question: do you think having Matt Smith as being the Doctor for that second part would have Do you think having a new Doctor for the second part? Like, I think it could have worked really well. But what do you think it could have worked?
I think it could have worked if you still then had the clone being David Tennant.
Good point. Yep.
And then you had the new Doctor, old Doctor, version 2.0, and then Donna, and then that way David Tennant could have gone off with Rose.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think it would have worked a lot better because I really, and we'll get to this, cannot stand the specials.
Okay, you've talked me into that because I think I've long said I reckon having a regeneration at the start of the story or in the middle of a story would be so interesting. It's something we haven't really seen in any classic or new Who. I mean, the only one I can think of is the Seventh Doctor regenerated at the start of a story, and that was no different to most regenerations where it's trying to deal with a new body for a story. Whereas if it's in the middle of a story, I think it'd be so interesting to see how you've got events already happening and the Doctor having to continue to deal with it.
Yes.
And the fact that everyone would have lost their minds when the credits rolled that episode and you've got the Doctor regenerating and everyone's like, well, hang on, I didn't know this was happening now.
Yes, it would have been
crazy.
And
we got Davros back as well. And we got Davros back as well.
Yes. Bloody Davros.
With Sarah Jane.
He's coming back
together again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole Dr. Donna clone Doctor thing, I think would have been more effective if we had a new Doctor. And it just not confuses me, but it just, like we said with the Saxon final, with the Master, it kind of takes this fantasy world a bit too far.
Not as far as the end of time, but yeah.
No, that's true. And I don't know, I just I like the idea of Donna taking on some Time Lord knowledge. Yeah. I think that works really well. I don't know, there's something about it I just don't like or didn't enjoy as much as I think maybe it was that cutesy wootsy factor. And it was very clear once the Doctor got hit and didn't regenerate, this was all going to end and everything would be happy. And I mean, I know it's not happy because we end up with Donna having her mind wiped and the Doctor feeling guilt about that, but she's not dead.
I think that's it's my problem with Russell T Davies and Moffat, where they prophesize these companions dying. So we've had Rose, who's going to die in battle. We've got Donna, who's going to die. We had Clara, who was going to die. And we had Bill, I can't remember if that was foreshadowed or what. I mean, she's the one who probably dies the most, but even she gets to go off to travel with, but then she goes off to travel with Water Lady. So all four of them die but don't die. I'm like, I get that it's a Doctor Who, it's a kid show or whatever, but you can kill people off and do it properly. Adric. Yeah. And
that happened with no warning and no discussion. And I was like, okay, he's dead, bye.
Kylie Minogue's character died. That was fine. River
She
sort
did.
of dies.
She came back as the
Well, she sort of,
Stardust.
yeah, but then she's
Yeah.
still like he couldn't bring her back properly. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
No.
But yeah. Well, how about so because we can keep talking about Donna. We'll link into the end of time because she comes back
Yes,
in
let's
that.
look at
So
the
we'll talk about
specials
some of the
quickly.
specials. Touch on a couple of them because we haven't talked about Planet of the Dead or Waters of Mars yet. I think Planet of the Dead. If we're going to talk about weakest episode across the specials and series 4 together, Planet of the Dead is probably the weakest of those for me.
Yes.
It's just very unmemorable. There's not a whole lot that goes on in it that I'm like, oh yeah, it's a great moment sort of thing.
I had never watched it up until this point. I think I started looking at these air dates. It was 2009.
HSE.
I was in my it was our final year of school. I was not paying attention to what was happening on television at all. So I missed a lot of these.
And they're very they were scattered through the year, so there wasn't really a set air date
I
to
watched
tune in.
Waters of Mars.
That's so Waters of Mars by comparison has that's a very classic episode in my mind. That even now you look at whenever we've got rovers going up to Mars and finding water, you see people joking about, oh, stay away from the water, don't touch the water, because this episode stays with people quite a lot, I think.
It's a great one.
And it's a good sort of two-parter with the fires of Pompeii, I think, where it's the Doctor sort of deciding he can save people if he wants to, and he declares himself Time Lord Victorious, which we've now got a run of books and media coming into that. But it's sort of the beginning of the end for him, where we talked last episode about how he's a bit of a dick, and this is when that side of him comes back out.
Yeah, he I mean, but Planet of the Dead. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around here. Didn't really like that. No, like Christina D'Souza annoyed me. It's like, yes, just annoying. So yeah, that episode wasn't like the storyline I thought was interesting. The fact that they were trapped and needed to get back through the wormhole. I think that was really an interesting plot. I just didn't like his new companion for that episode. She just kind of I think it was too out of place.
Although we do get he will knock 4 times, his first prophesized in that episode.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, that leads us into that final two-parter. Waters of Mars, fantastic episode. It's as you said, one of those ones that holds up for ages, and it's an alien that's not CGI, and that is terrifying because it feeds through the water.
Practical
and
effects.
It's so like, at the beginning of the episode that they're all going to die because he gets those glimpses of their profiles. On
the Doctor Who, the Wikipedia sort of equivalent.
Yes. And he's like, I can't do anything to help you. But then we have this sudden change. The Doctor's like, no, I can change time. I can change the future, and I'm going to do it. And I feel like that's very out of character.
Yeah, it was almost like they were like, we have to make people not like him anymore to make them less angry that he's leaving the show. It felt like they were trying to make us not like David Tennant.
It was an odd choice, and I feel like if this had happened like in series 4 and then carried on, like if it was a longer arc, yes, that would make sense. But it was literally for one episode. And then he comes, and you were saying like the 50th is meant to happen at this point as well, and I was like, he doesn't seem very Time Lord Victorious in the 50th.
Yeah,
like it feels like a temper tantrum, and then he moves on.
Although, yeah, I mean, like at the start of the end of time, he's sort of, he's got his luau on and his hat and sunnies. He's very chill. So I feel like, I mean, I guess maybe if he goes off and does a few things, and then in the 50th, it's him being like, I'm gonna have a vacation on Earth and go marry Elizabeth I. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. Like he's not very moody and evil in the 50th.
No, it just seems very odd. And I know you said there's a series of books and stuff that maybe it's more explored there, but in terms of like, I'm a viewer that's only going to watch the TV show. I'm not going to go read the books. Like, it seems out of place. And that leads us into the 2-part finale, which I didn't also realize was a Christmas special.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so the first part's the Christmas special, second part's the New Year's special, so it's sort of foreshadowing what we've got now of New Year's specials instead. But this, I mean, I'm sort of repeating myself. I just said it with the Planet of the Dead, but this two-part finale, I'm like, if the Stolen Earth for two-part was David Tennant's End, I think it would have been so much better, because End of Time is such, like, at the time I was probably like, oh, this is so amazing, and like his regeneration, and we're seeing all the companions and everything. This is great. But now I'm like, this is aged so terribly. It's just such a bad two-parter.
Yeah.
We talked last episode about John Sims as the Master and how great he is, and I'm like, this two-parter, I'm like, he's so weird, and like the skeleton thing, and it's just so hammy and like over
Yeah.
the top, and it's just, I don't
Yeah.
know. What did you think of it? Did you like it?
As I said to you while watching it, John Sims is he's a good actor, and he plays the chaotic evil well without needing, like, they could have conveyed that he was still, like, his regeneration process or his attempt to come back, which I'll talk about in a second, did not go to plan without having the blue skull flashing. Like, I feel like they could
Yeah.
have had him doing those series of, he kind of like gets like a broken record and just goes on tangents. I was like, they needed like, it didn't need to be that explicit to the audience. Something was wrong. Like, you could tell in his mannerisms and his actions that something wasn't quite right.
And it was just dodgy. It was CGI when I'm like, yeah, you
Yeah,
don't need it.
they didn't need that extra CGI. I had to laugh at the beginning, and that just put me off, I think, for the rest of the two-parter, watching them try to bring the Master back, and it's like the cult of Harold Saxon. And they've got potions, and
very Harry Potter.
it was very Voldemort coming back. They needed the, not blood, or they didn't need the hand as they do in Harry Potter, but they needed, the residue from her, like Lucy Saxon's mouth, because she's kissed him. And I was like, it's been how many years? Is the residue still there?
Yeah.
Really? Has she, like, not brushed her teeth in this time? But then her all of a sudden being like, I knew you were planning this, and I'm going to stop you. And I was like, what is happening? You've been like solitary confinement for how many months?
It reminds me of
years, and just.
It reminds me of in The Curse of the Fatal Death, which is that sort of comedy special that Moffat wrote in the 90s, where it's Rowan Atkinson and whoever the Master is, and then Rowan Atkinson's like, no, the Master's like, I've planned this because I went back in time and got the architect to build a trapdoor, and then Rowan Atkinson's like, well, actually, I went back in time further and bribed the architect and put the trapdoor under you, and it's like they're both like, and I'm like, and that was mocking this whole like. Well, I saw through your plan, and oh no, I planned for you seeing through my plan, and it's like it's very silly.
Yes,
with Lucy just being like, oh no, I saw it coming, and we've got our own little sect who are fighting against you. I was like, oh god, okay.
Yeah, I think that's when I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. And then they started showing the Master with his X-ray skeleton. I was just like, this is not pleasant. They bring in the Naismiths as well, who is just like, who is this guy? Why is he so creepy? Is he sleeping with his daughter? Like, there was weird vibes happening there. It was unsettling.
I mean, and it's really a shame because Timothy Dalton is a great actor, and so it was really cool seeing him in Doctor Who, and he's as Rassilon. And a really great moment as well was as he's marching down a corridor on Gallifrey, talking about how the Doctor's got the moment, and it's a great tie-in to the 50th, which holds, because obviously this was done, and they were just saying like, the Doctor's going to do something to destroy us, and then it was built and incorporated into the 50th, and I'm like, they flow together really well. It's just a shame this is such a weak story that it's not something you could watch back to back with the 50th and really enjoy.
No, there's too much happening. I feel like it should have either just been the Master or just been the Time Lords.
Yeah.
There was just too much happening, and I legitimately forgot the Time Lords were even involved in this, because I was like, oh, the Master's back, and I saw him as more of a threat.
What did you think?
I did enjoy the montage of John Sim becoming everyone on Earth.
Oh yeah,
that made me chuckle.
I was going to say, what did you think of the actual regeneration at the end of the episode?
I was sad to see him go, and I think this is why, as we've now discovered, starting the 11th Doctor, I'm watching those episodes. I've not seen any of those episodes, because I was a bit cranky that David Tennant left, even though I still love Matt Smith. And I loved him before he was on Doctor Who, because I'd watched Party Animals and he was fantastic in that. But I don't know. That regeneration was good. It was good. I liked the fact that it was so over the top. And he destroyed the TARDIS in the meantime. I thought the actual regeneration was probably the best part of the episode. I didn't understand the Doctor radiation thing, because we had seen him with Martha in episode Smith and Jones.
Yeah.
Where he takes on radiation and then disposes it through shoe.
Maybe he didn't have any Converse with Wilfred.
Yeah, well, he was very Converse anyway.
Well, I know.
It was nice that I mean, look, you can talk about him with Wilfred, because you had a lot to say when we watched it.
That's same. That's probably the least likable the Doctor has ever been for me. More so than when he was choking Perry. More so than when he was the first Doctor being grumpy with things. Him, as much as he then sort of took it back and was like, it'll be my honor to do it. Him saying to Wilfred, when Wilfred's like, oh, can you let me out? And he's like, of course you had to go and do it. And you're so unimportant and I'm so important and I had all these things that I was going to do and you had to go and do that. Yes, he's ranting because he's already saying to himself that he's going to save him. So he's already saying, like, he's frustrated because he's like, I'm going to save him because that's what I do. But to say to somebody who's potentially about to die, because Wilfred's like, oh, no, just leave me. I'm an old man. I've lived my life. And he's like, yes, you have, but I'm going to save you anyway. Like, it's just like really horrible things to say. And I'm just like, yeah, it's nasty. I'm just like, because that's his sort of Time Lord Victorious streak coming out from the waters of Mars, where he's like, I can do all these things. I'm so important. I'm such a big thing. It was not great. So I do wonder if it was very much this is why he has to go, and please, as an audience, accept this is his time, because look how bad
David Tennant decided he wanted to be Hamlet, which is a great opportunity, so we have to get rid of him.
Yeah. The actual regeneration, I think, was quite drawn out. I don't think we needed to see him catching up with the descendant of what's her name from Family of Blood. As much I love that two-parter. I've talked about it on the last episode, how much I like that, but it was a bit out of place with, and even Martha and Mickey. I'm like, oh, so we've thrown Martha and Mickey together, even though she was engaged to someone else.
Yes, the farewell tour embarks on showing Martha and Mickey. We talked about this. I kind of like it, but as you said, is it a little bit questionable because they've just kind of put those two together. But also I feel like Martha's not the type of girl that would settle with Mickey. Yeah. And even in this farewell tour, she seemed like a different character.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I think
Martha. It was weird.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think you get rid of the Sarah Jane Smith, you get rid of the Martha and Mickey, you get rid of the descendant who's written the book, whose name she's named Verity Newman, which I thought was quite cute, being a nod back to the people that created Doctor Who. But you get rid of those three, you have him farewell Wilfred, and then travel forward in time to Donna's wedding to give her the lottery ticket, which I thought that was fine. And then you just have him go see Rose and regenerate. And like you have it as like a 5-minute thing, or like not even like a 2-minute thing, and then it's done. And it just felt very dragged out.
Yes, because like even with, I know that Tennant was a beloved Doctor, but like it was just totally anyway. Like we don't in Kasiku, like the Doctors just regenerate. Like Tom Baker's just literally out of nowhere, bang, he's gone. It's like what?
I was going to say, so we do get the floating heads of all his companions, but I'm like, that's all you need. It's like a 30-second thing which is a highlight of all his companions. Yeah, and Fifth Doctor, I think, was the same. We got his like Perry and Tegan and stuff.
Yeah, so I agree that it should have just been, him going to the future and giving Donna the lottery ticket, and then him going back to Rose, because it really kind of ties that back to like Rose was the first companion of this series, and that he obviously has a special spot for her. Yeah. I mean, he left his body double with her, which was also, too, I think, happy clappy. But anyway, it is what it is.
And it's almost like
Um,
it's talking to the audience when he's saying, "Oh, the year's 2005. Bet you're going to have a great year." And it's like, well, and it's also the year that Doctor Who came back. So,
yeah.
yeah, it sort of ties the Russell T Davies era together.
Yes, it does. It's a nice, like, that was a nice way for it to end. Um, for him to see Rose again, but yeah, that farewell tour was a bit drawn out
Mm.
and questionable. I did
And
like that
what?
we got to see Alonso again, and that
Oh, yeah, of course,
Captain
yeah,
Jack
Professor Jack, yeah. It was
was
nice, but again,
Alonso.
I'm like, is this really necessary? If we're going to give Jack a pickup line as part of your
Yeah.
farewell tour, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It was all a bit much for me. But what was your first impression of Matt Smith? I was going to ask you.
Oh no, I was gonna say
Oh,
it
yeah,
was interesting when we watched it and you're like, why show the descendant of Joan Redfern from Human Nature
yeah,
and Family of Blood and not like someone like Sally Sparrow?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think, well, yeah, and as I said to you, like the reasoning I do think is because he actually had a like relationship with her. Like she was someone that she genuinely like. If we think about Sally Sparrow, he didn't know Sally Sparrow. He met her once in
What
passing, and the
about
rest of it was, um, through the video.
then? What about Jenny then?
He
I mean,
thinks Jenny's dead.
I know. Yeah, okay. So he thought Jenny was dead, but I'm still like, she's out there traveling. I mean, if the whole idea is we're gonna have him go back and see sort of iconic characters or moments from his series, like at least that's from the previous series with Donna, not like the random person from a Martha series. Like, what about like I don't know, people like what about Shakespeare? I don't know, like people from the Rose series. Like it was just a very
No, it
random
makes
scene
sense
put in
with
there.
with her because like he was in love with her and he was at that point willing to give up being a Time Lord to live with her. So that made sense to me. He
Yeah,
went and saw all the people who had like made a significant impact on his character.
fair enough. So then,
Yeah.
what was your first
Um,
impression of Matt Smith?
as I said, I really liked Matt Smith as like he's being cast as the Doctor. I knew him from Party Animals, so I was really happy with that, and I thought he was quite good in that like couple of minutes we saw him at the end. He found his tagline very quickly with Geronimo. Um,
Yeah, I was thinking that. It's very, very quick to be like, well, it's not Alan Z anymore, it's Geronimo. Yeah.
yes. But then, as I said, I checked out once his series actually started. I was just like, yeah, no.
It was an
So,
interesting introduction to him because I felt like it was a very like we got the squeaky voice and the long hair. It was like you're sort of very much emphasizing that he's quite a young doctor, which I was like, it was interesting. It was brave of them. I remember not being hugely thrilled with him when I saw him in that episode. But then, it's the same with David Tennant when in that first little scene with him when Christopher Eccleston had gone, because you're still getting over the fact that you've just lost your favorite doctor,
yeah.
or a doctor that you really enjoyed watching. So it's always a bit of a challenge to fill that spot, I guess. But look,
You know who I just looking at, sorry, I'm going off on a
it's okay.
Wikipedia tangent. I've
It
just
was
clicked on them looking at the 11th Doctor, and like the rumors about casting was Peterson Joseph, who appeared in um Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways, and David Tennant was the other favorite. And other rumored candidates, not David Tennant, sorry, David Morrissey. Other rumored candidates were Sean Pertwee,
oh
and like
yeah,
I would
okay,
be okay with that. James McAvoy would also be fine with that, or Russell Tovey as Alonso, not
wow,
as Alonso, but like who played Alonso.
yeah.
Like I reckon he'd work as a doctor as well. It's always interesting looking at these um casting rumors. Anyway, it's the same with James
So
Bond.
I think for this season, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10, and the point
Yeah,
five loses is for the weaker specials and sort of bring it down. And also, I'm like, I don't think anything could really be a 10 out of 10. But this is as close to a perfect season as I think we're probably ever going to get with Doctor Who. I just think
yeah,
it's really rewatchable. It's really easy to enjoy, and lots of great episodes. What did you think?
yeah. It is a fantastic. This is probably my favorite. Okay, series one is my favorite. I really enjoy series one, but I'd have to put this on par as well. Like it's just every episode is good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for joining me to chat about this series, Lo.
that's okay. It was lots of fun to whinge about specials and also celebrate Series 4.
And look, thank you everyone for listening in. We will be back sometime soon to review Series 5, which is Matt Smith's first season in the TARDIS. So be sure to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter. I think all the links should be in the description below. And we'll keep you posted. Yeah, Instagram as well. And we'll keep you posted. There's always other content that we're looking to produce. I know we've got the Bad Batch for Star Wars is starting soon, so I'm sure we'll be doing reviews for that, or at least some sort of discussion around that. And we'll keep going from there. But until next time, thanks for joining us. See you.
See ya.